And with that, we are thrilled to welcome in three-time NBA champ Danny Green to the show. How you doing today, Danny?
Good. How you guys doing? Doing well?
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Danny. I know we had some technical difficulties on our side last week, and we appreciate that you worked with us to get you back on. We're excited about it. And I wanted to start with the Luka trade. Obviously, we want to talk about the Cavs, but we were all stunned either Saturday night or Sunday morning when we saw the news. All fans and media, we all think the Dallas Mavericks are completely nuts. Do you agree with that, or is there some case for what the Mavericks did here?
I think we are all still stunned. I mean, it's hard to believe until you see them in uniform. I don't think that I think this seemed rushed for most people. They said it took over some time and weeks. I think it was a good trade for both teams. If Lakers are trying to rebuild and Dallas is trying to win now, but the only issue is people have is like, why didn't you get more for Luka? Even though AD is a great player and Luka's so good, it's making it seem like AD is not enough. But you would think you would get more picks, like a future, in case AD isn't fully healthy for those 2 or 3 years you have with him to maximize winning. So I think that's the reason why people are thinking it's a mistake, and it didn't make sense. So a lot of it on both sides kind of didn't make sense right now, but we'll see. We still have a day or so, 2 days before the deadline. There might be some extra moves made. It might make more sense then.
Danny, let me ask you about one of your former teams, the Spurs. Obviously, they ended up getting Swiper. Now Swiper and Wemby together. How you feeling about that? And how did they manage to get more? They got 3 first-round picks as well. I don't know who y'all GM is.
They made out in the night. No, they did well. They did very well. And I'm surprised they didn't have to give up Castle or Vassell. Like, for them to be able to get him and not give up any of the main pieces, they made out like thieves in the night. And I don't know who tweeted it, but they came up. This is a win for them. This is an unbelievable duo with Wemby and Fox and all the pieces around them, your young core. Sacramento got 6 picks, but they didn't look as good. When you look at them, they're not as great as they look. But it looked like every team got what they wanted in that trade. But it looks like I think San Antonio was the winners of this one for sure.
Man, we gotta go back to Luka. We gotta go back to that. Like, what at what point in time does anybody trade like a guy that's 25 that's putting up them numbers, right? He's beloved in Dallas. They just went to the finals. Have you ever seen anybody get traded like that the next year? And what's the underlying move? Do you believe that this was a strictly basketball reason, or there's something else that we ain't found out about yet that we gonna get to see that might be off the court that pushed this move?
I think there's something else that we don't know about, and it's in terms of his health, his injury, his body. I think they know something that is a lingering issue that may become a bigger issue in the near future. But ultimately, I think this was a ballsy move by Nico, and good for him for making it. I think he opened up the floodgates. I think more GMs will take the risk of doing it because they're looking at a formula. And he's a great player, but he's very much a James Harden-like type of player. And James is very good too, but he hasn't shown that style of play has been able to win you a championship successfully. So if they're looking at it and saying, oh, this might not be the formula to win us a championship, we might need to change directions. And Nico's like, we're not going to be here that long, so we need to win now. So regardless, I'm going to make the move to where it puts us in better position. So shout out to him for having the balls to do so. I think there's more behind the scenes that we know that'll come to light. But ultimately, I think they thought we can't win with this type of formula of basketball, and we need to kind of reroute this and change it and try to get as much we can for it in return to win now.
Danny, wanted to switch gears to the Cavs here. Obviously, Cavaliers are having a magnificent season so far. Evan Mobley's development this year has been fantastic. Could you talk about him and how high you think his ceiling is down the line?
I mean, it was like either he can be AD or somebody else. So Anthony Davis is something he can be very much like. He has the skills, he has the potential. His growth has been great. He's been bringing the ball up, showing the point guard skills, doing a little bit of everything off the bounce. So, his ceiling is, Anthony Davis. If not, he could be better if he wanted to, because he's a great defensive player. He could be defensive player of the year. I think candidate a couple years. He could probably win it a couple years. And offensively, he's stretching it to the 3. He stays pretty. If he can stay healthy, he can be in that conversation as a top 75 player in this league in history.
Wow.
Danny, I know that the Cavs ended up finishing with 3 All-Stars. Do you think Jared should have gotten into the All-Star game as the 4th?
It's tough for me to do that. Internally, me being a former Cavalier and being biased, I wanted 4 guys. But it's tough to get 4 guys from one team in the All-Star game. You know, Golden State did it some years ago, and I thought it was still unreal. He was definitely deserving of it. But a lot of people make cases that they have, you know, 1 superstar in that group. For them to get 3 is more than fair, more than enough. They've been winning, and they definitely rewarded them for winning by giving them 3. 4 would have been tough. But I think Jared, on any other team, if they were winning, he would have been deserving of an All-Star.
Danny, I'm curious, speaking of the All-Star game, you know, I'm an old guy, and when I was a kid in the 80s, the All-Star game, the NBA All-Star game was the best of any sport.
Yes.
By far. And now, as a fan, I think it stinks. Now, I don't know how you feel as a player, a former player, but I heard Wemby just said, hey, I'm going to the All-Star game for business, not to make friends. I think it's only the players that can make the game better. I don't think there's any rules they can make. What do you think about the whole situation?
I agree with you. And even as a former player, it does stink. And the game's not, I don't care how many formats you come to the table.
Yeah.
It's not going to matter and change the viewership unless guys come to play. So if guys aren't ready to play, it's not gonna be something people want to see. And if he's coming as a business trip, hopefully it's not a business as off the court brand type of trip. But if he comes in and tries to play, great. He can be the guy that turns it around. But ultimately, yeah, the All-Star game is not what it used to be. And I understand, you know, guys are going, they want to be rested just like everybody else. They get a week now. Before it was a weekend. Now you get a week, so you get some time to rest. But guys want to take care of their bodies and not get hurt. But ultimately, it seems as if, you know, the less practice and the less playing is causing, I wouldn't say more injuries. It just seems like there's more injuries happening than it was in the past, because guys actually practiced more then and played, you know, harder and more games. And it seemed like there were less in, you know, today's game, there's so many injuries in the last 5 years that, you know, if I wanted to continue my career, I have a really good shot at getting on a team at this point because I know there's going to be injuries throughout the whole year.
Yeah. You know, Danny, looking at the Cavs right now, obviously best record in the league. We've been debating back and forth on this show a lot in terms of, do they need another person? Do they need another bigger wing? Do they need another? You know, Cam Johnson is a guy that people have been talking about. As constituted, if you're looking at the roster, you're looking at the Celtics. Do the Cavs need to make a move in order to kind of put them in a better position to beat the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals if they get there?
They could. I don't think they need to. You know, ultimately, you know, Boston's been very up and down, and they haven't been the healthiest either. So I think Cleveland has a really good shot of being the team that upsets them. It's them and New York possibly the only 2 teams that can challenge them in the East. I think Cleveland has the pieces. Yes, it'd be great to add like some depth, like another backup big to help, you know, Jared and Evan take off the rebounding and defensive responsibilities. It'd be great to have another 3-and-D guy. Cam Johnson is perfect. I love him. Carolina guy. So he would be great for stretching the floor and playing defense. The only pieces that make sense to move and that has been playing well for them is Strus. You know, him and Strus are similar, just that he's probably a better defender. In my eyes, I don't know for sure in particular in comes to statistics or breakdown. But if I had to, like I said, put some packages together, I would try to keep everybody. And the only person that really said that close to his contract would be Strus and maybe some smaller pieces, and maybe a couple picks. But I don't think they need to make a move. They have really good chemistry and they're playing well. They just have to get back fully healthy because they had Karras out for a little bit. They had, you know, Darius out for a little bit. They had a couple people with some random injuries. If they get everybody back healthy, they should be fine.
You know, Danny, the Cavs decided to run back essentially their same roster. Obviously, they made a coaching change, and I think you were here in 23 with JB. You know, when you look at what JB's philosophy was versus what Kenny's doing, what's the biggest difference? Because essentially, you know, the offense has taken off to a whole nother level.
For sure. I mean, I can't give you Kenny's philosophies. I just know he's doing a great job. I never got a chance to play for Kenny. I just think JB was great for rebuilding years and, you know, hasn't had a lot of playoff experience. I just think Kenny, you know, has been in those type of – obviously he was with Golden State. He was with a lot of different teams. So I think and we won't know until you get to the playoffs. So we'll see his adjustments and how they, pull it together during that time. I just think that JB hadn't been ready for play. I was there for the first year of the playoffs. We definitely weren't ready, to play the Knicks. The following year they did better. They beat Orlando. So yeah, I couldn't tell you the ins and outs, but it looks like Kenny's doing a great job, and we'll see. So the biggest question for the Cavs is, are they winning? Like, they always have great regular seasons. Are they ready and willing enough to do what it takes to win in the playoffs? Are they ready? Are they playoff ready? And only the play out can tell us that, and we'll see what they do this postseason and what Kenny could do.
I'm sure we'll ask you whether or not you believe the Cavs can actually win the title in a sec, but I got to ask you something more related to the trade deadline real quick, Danny. I'm on your Pro Basketball Reference page, and I believe you were traded 6 times in your career. I'm not 100 if I'm counting right. I believe it was 6.
I think that's right.
For the guys not only on the Cavs but around the league right now who, with the deadline being on Thursday or potentially being floated in rumors, how kind of difficult is it to be a guy on, let's just use a George Niang, for example, or you mentioned Strus, we could use Strus. On a championship caliber team, you have the best record in basketball, but your name's getting floated in rumors. How do you kind of put that to the side and focus on what's right ahead of you, which is a game against the Celtics, without letting that distract you from your ultimate goal?
I mean, I think today's kids are used to it at this point. Back then, it was like, we didn't have the information, so Twitter and Instagram is way bigger now, where you can see pieces and names moving. And once you're in the trade rumors 1 year or 2 years, you kind of just get used to it. These guys are old enough to know what it's like, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. There's nothing you can do to control it. So just go out and hoop. Control what you can control. If you play your best basketball, it'll probably keep you safer to where you are. But, it's different things for different guys. You never know. Some guys have different tactics. The only advice I could give you is, worry about the things you control and just go out and hoop. Trades, you can't control that. So hopefully these guys are veterans enough to not let those things hinder their play.
All right, Danny, I got this thing. Every basketball dude that come on here, I'm going to ask him this question. This is something new I'm doing in my own right. Now, I know good and well there's people who always don't understand how good basketball players are as professionals. They think they think, oh, I played in high school. I'm like, no, bro. Like, they're not going to miss at the Y. So I'm going to just give a little context here. So to prove how good these guys are, give me one of the best players that you've played against that would be a mid-name or a name that the fans don't think is really good, right? Like somebody the fans are like
Brian Scalabrine type?
Yeah, like Scalabrine. Scalabrine is giving you buckets, bro. Like he's gonna
and he kills regular people.
Give me one name that you're like, listen, you think he was a scrub? He will murder you. He will destroy you.
There's so many, but I'm gonna give people a Cleveland Cavalier that they look at and probably is like, oh, people think they could probably dog him in a one-on-one or pickup game. George Niang, he's
facts
really good. They look at him like, oh, he's out of shape. I'm like, no, he's in good enough. He's in great shape. He's moving his body. He's able to keep up, to get up and down that floor. It's a physical game. And you look at him like, oh, I could probably do what he does. No, you can't. And he will dog any one of you. From
that is a perfect example.
There's a bunch of Cavaliers. Sam Merrill on the bench. Like, there's a lot of guys on that bench that people look at like, oh, I could play a spot. No, you can't. They will dog you.
So you said Tristan Thompson can give us buckets. Tristan Thompson is still
Tristan Thompson will give you buckets.
I don't know, Danny. I'm 5'7", 340. I think I could back down Sam Merrill. No,
you won't get the ball.
Danny, by the way, how do we let a Long Island kid like you not go to St. John's? How did we not get you at St. John's, by the way?
It was in my top 5, but Carolina came in the picture and it was a wrap.
It was a wrap.
I was always a Carolina. I was a Carolina kid. I was a fan of them since, Mike, Vince Carter, Jerry Stackhouse, Rasheed Wallace, those guys. I've watched them play. So
all right,
they were close to home, but once Carolina
Johnny's
came
looking
to
good
the picture,
right now, though. They're looking good. Hey, I'm curious.
They're looking better than my Carolina team right now.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. I'm curious, Danny. Recently, you were doing a podcast and you said something that I was surprised to hear a former player say, where you were talking about the Wizards specifically, and you talked about how, you didn't think the guys were playing hard, and almost like they should have salary taken away from them because they're not being professional and not playing hard. Can you elaborate on that a little more?
It was more so finding, because I think it's an all-around thing, and if you watch the pod more, I was with FanDuel. run it back. And it was more so like I think it starts from the top. And, teams are tanking on purpose. They're trying to get Cooper flagged. And it's tough for fans to watch. It's tough for anybody to watch and to show up. It's tough for guys to play. I think not only it was more so finding, front offices or finding organizations.
Right.
And then making that trickle down to the players if necessary. You know what I'm saying? Like, because ultimately, if you're a player, you got to have some pride too, right? So if you find front offices, that ain't touching the players. They don't care. But if you find front offices and coaches and players all the way around, then they're like, all right, everybody gets in line. Everybody's willing to, turn it around and actually play hard. I think they won 2 in a row, which is good to see. But they're showing you they're capable of actually being like it's a difference between losing games and just getting blown out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They've been getting blown out, and if you're fighting any professional team, you could be within 10 points, of most of those games that you're losing.
Danny, let me ask you about the Cavs again. Obviously, we're high on them here. We all feel like they can win the title. My question is, do you feel that they can win the title this year? And when you've watched them in the past in the postseason, when they had their struggles, what was it that they need to fix in order for them to be able to win the title this year?
Anything is possible. I've seen stranger things happen, but in my mind, I don't think they're title ready just yet. I think they can win the East. I think they can surprise some people, but it always takes a year of getting dogged or losing or taking a tough one in the playoffs, deeper in the playoffs, to get to be like ready for that. And I think OKC, Minnesota has lost in the Western Conference Finals. Like, you have to go somewhat deep in the playoffs and take a loss for you to know what it takes to be on that stage. So yes, I think they could surprise you by getting to the finals, but whatever team's coming out of that West, I think those lights will be kind of bright for them, and they're not mature or ready yet to win one. But I've seen stranger things happen. They could easily win one. It's all within the It's not just about playing great basketball. It's all about staying healthy and having the basketball guys on your side. And they could be the healthiest team in the playoffs and ultimately win. But I just think they need one more year. And keeping the same group together was huge. It was key. Because now you got that chemistry. One more year, I think they'll definitely be in title contention. And even if they don't add pieces, I think they're going to be one of those teams that is going to be, mentally and physically and emotionally ready to be on that stage.
Make sure you guys check out Danny on ESPN. It's a great job on
awesome.
Their NBA shows doing this. Danny,
Thank
appreciate
you
coming
and
on.
Inside the Green Room. Inside the Green Room with Danny Green, my guy Harrison Sanford.
Oh, sorry. Whatever you got to promote, Danny, put it out before we get to the last question.
Go ahead, man. I already told Inside the Green Room with Harrison Sanford, with Danny Green, my co-host Harrison Sanford. So that's where you can catch me as well. But shoot the question, man. I'm interested to hear what you have to ask.
Listen, this is a humbling experience because typically I take pride in being the best three-point shooter on UCSS any given day.
He played Division III basketball, Danny. He thinks he's a superstar.
I scored 23 last night, 6 and 9 from 3. But not only that, Danny, not only am I not the best shooter on the show today, I wore number 14. I was always the best shooter who wore number 14 because no one wears 14. You wore 14 at every stop in your NBA career. How did you end up on number 14? It's not the common 23
it's not.
Single digits. How'd you end up with 14?
It's a great question. It's an interesting one. It has an interesting story behind it. It doesn't matter what level you play, fellas, by the way. If you're a shooter, you're a shooter. So he can shoot regardless if he's 3 or not.
Real respect.
I'll give you some flowers. But for me, 14 was a town number. So I grew up playing football and basketball. Those were my main sports. I was very much a heavy football player. I was a quarterback, and I loved it. My dad kind of said, the career over here might last you longer, a little bit better on the body and the mind. It might be a little easier. I'm glad I chose basketball. It worked out for me. But I really loved football. But, the best player and the leader of the team usually wore 14. It was a football town. And the varsity head coach, his brother, wore it and had passed. And he honored his brother by giving that number to the captain and the best player. And that trickled all the way down through, youth leagues. So 14 was a town number. It always not reminded me, but it always, for me, kept me at home, grounded, and always let my people from back home know that I'll never forget where I came from, and that I'm trying to represent the town as best as I can.
That's an awesome
story, Danny. Thanks for joining us, man.
That's great.
Anytime.
Yeah,
appreciate you guys having me, man.
Thank you.
Enjoy the deadline. Enjoy the talks, man. There's more trades to come. So
that is
we'll
Danny
talk to you
Green,
guys soon.
3-time champ.